Hi all. I thought we could have a look at an instructive game from a docking computer perspective. So that's the new concept which this channel is introducing, which is basically examining or trying to examine the guaranteed if-then sequences, just to increase an awareness of tactical vulnerabilities, which can then create greater anticipation of opportunities. Okay, so in this game, actually, a very talented young player, Aman Hambleton, who's a brilliant bullet player on ChessCube, known as Telos on some servers, very great blitz player and bullet player. But he's also had some fantastic results in long time controls, and in the Canadian Open Championship last year, he had a fantastic game against Joshua Friedel, a very dramatic game. I won't tell you the result. So Joshua Friedel's black, 2586 Grandmaster. Aman is 2315 at this time of this game. He plays d4, and the opponent, Joshua, plays the Nimzo Indian. And we have here Kasparov's, favourite move, Queen C2, like the main line, considered the main line. But the dark side of this is that sometimes you lose a bit of time. You try and get the two bishops without damage to pawn structure. It's a noble idea, but sometimes the dynamics will favour black. If black can play very dynamically and maybe accentuate the lead and development somehow, it could start looking very painful for white. And that's something we need to bear in mind here in this line. So black just castles, and not minding that after a3, white's collected the two bishops. But this is not the end of the story here. It would be naive actually to assume it is. Okay, because we're talking, potentially losing trump cards for both sides. That, okay, black can potentially lose because this dark square bishop can be potentially useful, and often idealistically this kind of maneuver would shield the bishop, and then you play for e4, and Kasparov has won many games with that kind of thing, and many other grandmasters using the bishop pair. But here black's playing very energetically. Actually, he plays d5, and after bishop g5, h6, possibly the safest for white. To avoid black getting too much dynamism in the position, kicking off with knight e4 here, is possibly to play bishop takes f6 and just give the dark square bishop up immediately, and just play the resulting position. Make black lose a bit of time recapturing. So that might be the way. But Aman played bishop h4, which is the kind of more idealistic way of playing the position. But black's very aggressive now, trying to gain tempo on white's queen and tempo on the bishop. So these are potential, two tempo gainers in the position here, and it's quite violent really. I'm not sure I'd like to be on the white side trying to sort of justify the two bishops for what happened now. It's quite a frightening game. So if you're a fan of this variation, this might put you off, well, especially off bishop h4, this game, for what happened soon. So c5, so black is creating maximum tension in the center with c5. Now d takes c, which might be okay, if white's idea is to potentially castle queenside and put pressure on d5 again. It looks all very noble, this cause of trying to play positionally, but black plays very violently now and uses his tempo gaining opportunities. First he kicks the bishop, not minding about weakening squares around his king, because now he's gaining a tempo on the queen, and there starts to be some issues here with queen c2. Black has this aggressive knight. Okay, he's castled kingside, then that might be a target for h4, you might wonder. If white can peel open the h-file, is black's king going to be vulnerable? But the thing is, black has a strong initiative here. The white king is still in the center. Potentially queen a5 check's very annoying, for example, in some lines. For the moment, black carries on developing pieces, knight a6. So look at white's development. It's not developed yet on the king side of the pieces, but white decides now to castle queenside. Now this looks like a logical, positional move, just play on the d pawn, then later play h4. But things get, quite unpleasant in this position very, very quickly. And the engine's suggestion here is actually to play the move B4, which actually keeps the queen out of A5 in many variations. And here's a violent variation. Say knight takes anyway, and if you took here, this would be dangerous for white, because check, very painful resource in the position here for black. Painful for white. I wonder if you can spot it if I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, bishop d7, because they're threatening to skewer the queen to the king. Now if a4 is forced down, rook a8, and look at black's pieces and teamwork. You know, the king stuck in the centre, dc and bishop a4 all threatened. It starts to get nasty, and here, for example, bishop d6, check. It starts to be a very unpleasant position for white. You know, he's going to be losing the rook. His king's, you know, still being kicked about. Very horrible position. So basically that shows, you know, the dynamic pitfalls here. But the thing is, white is not obliged to take on c5. He can just use this pawn to keep the queen out of a5 here, and apparently just play knight f3. So if knight takes hg, queen f6 hitting the rook, rook d1, white should be okay. That should be okay for white. But in the game, after knight a6, white castled queenside. Knight a takes c5, and we have still this nasty resource lurking here, because white has in effect weakened these light squares, and this is the nasty resource just celebrating these light square weaknesses and this skewing line, which actually represents, if you think about it, another tempo gain opportunity. The queen and rook, you know, on this skewing diagonal. So unfortunately, after f3, the horror of the position is revealed, that white's not going to have a cozy time when the knight moves back and then h4. Instead, black reveals the horror of the dynamism here. He plays bishop d7. So, you know, black's docking computer for the moment is on. Is white's docking computer on, looking at the forcing moves? Because this is a very forcing continuation. Now let's see what would happen if white had taken, then bishop a4, queen moves, bishop d1, and this is starting to be nightmare scenario time. After knight takes e4, it's a nightmare for white, this position. We can continue, if you would like, the analysis here. So if queen c2, queen d5, if takes here rook c8, so say queen c2, that seems to be the most sensible move. This looks to be a crushing move, c3. So if queen e4, queen d2, mating, it just shows, you know, so much for the two bishops. And here, you know, this is just very, very annoying. If takes here rook c8, it's just really an unpleasant position altogether. This kind of thing, you know, these are just demonstrating disasters. So black has played very, very dynamically and energetically, and set white up in a way to sort of trying to play classically to collect the two bishops, and hope, you know, black's going to retreat. But black didn't retreat the knight. You know, just bishop d7. It's a nightmare. So white is forced to play a further weakening move to keep the bishop out of a4. b3. It's not really what white wants in the position, and now black continues dynamically with d takes c4. So what is going on here now? If taking here, then again unpleasantness, check, or taking on b3 to attack the queen. You know, rook c8 if queen takes. So queen c4, rook c8 anyway. King moves, knight a4, and again this is another nightmare scenario. For example, like this, it's just, you see that it's unpleasant, and echoing in all this, you know, white's piece is just underdeveloped. The king is vulnerable. There's too many poor moves. It looks like an embarrassment for the poor 23-15 by the 2586. And what has black done, except for, you know, offering you know, a positional sacrifice to emphasize the dynamism, you know, not moving the knight back here. So anyway, d takes c4, b4. The thing is, I think this game shows us we shouldn't give up hope. So keep the docking computer on for both sides while looking at this game. So check, and now another good move for black, I believe was played here. Knight ed2 check. Okay, so what is going on here? Can white have taken on d2? What happens if rook takes d2? Actually, let's just check that out. If rook takes d2, there's a very forcing move here to consider. Basically, queen f6 threatening mate in 1. Queen b2, say. Otherwise, how is this fended off? This queen a1. It's simple but very powerful. And if queen b2 taking, queen takes, bishop a4, there's numerous threats now, like c3, c2. So let's say bishop e1 to stop c3. This kind of continuation might be white's best, but still it's not pleasant, this position, from a practical point of view. And if white doesn't find technical moves like bishop e1, say he plays a different move, could be in really hot water here, after c3. This is like mate in 9 time, apparently. So rook ac8, and it's nasty. It's like a forced mate in 7. So basically, black clearly was better here, and that reveals a fantastic resource as well. This queen f6 idea. So king a2 was played here. And now another very forceful dynamic move, bishop a4, pointing at white's queen. White now plays bishop e5. Okay, so at least maybe c3's going to be useful to the bishop. If not, to stop the pawn, is to play bishop c3 and put these pieces under pressure. But unfortunately, black can also try and open the a file. So you might be thinking, this isn't what I wanted from the opening. I wanted just to collect the bishop pair. I didn't want my king to be slaughtered and not have any development on the king's side. No, this isn't the prettiest scenario that you would have dreamt of from the start in the opening. You might have had idealistic ideas, like you play h4, black king would be vulnerable, on the dark squares. After all, he did play this seemingly outrageous pawn move g5 earlier, which is just asking for it, surely. Well, anyway, we shouldn't give up hope, and I think this game is going to demonstrate that. White now plays h4. Okay, so black just mines with 8 takes b4, so he's opening a road to the king, and it should be all over now, shouldn't it? H takes g5, which is logical for white to try and get something going on the king's side. But doesn't black have knockout blows now? Or can't black just take the pawn on g5 to try and keep the line closed here? Well, if black had taken them, then white would be in trouble. If queen takes g5, apparently this is really bad news, because look, the white king is getting slaughtered here. So say f4, knight d4, for example, queen takes check, 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 cd. It's very, very unpleasant. Because white's pieces are not really a fantastic team here if the rook hasn't got access on the h-file, and there's still menacing threats to deal with. So say rook takes, it looks as though is white's attack crashing through, but unfortunately black's forcing moves, check, 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 and now parrying white's attack. There'll be a threat of mate here, f6, to get a breather to carry on the attack. This should finish white, really. So say queen f2, trying to be ingenious, otherwise white's finished. Takes, knight f3, e takes. Black is just murdering white here. These are technical variations. There's lots to explore here, but you get the general picture that how many attacking pieces has white got on the black king? Numerically, it looks hopeless in many of these variations. Okay. Now black, as well as queen g5, knight c1 check is also another idea for c3, because then queen d5 will be with check, and this will be virtually like defenseless for white. If he's forced to play bishop takes, b takes, queen c3, then bishop takes d1, and where is white's attack, this is pretty hopeless as well. We could actually continue this position on if you're worried about G takes H6, if you think that offers something. But forcing moves again, rook takes, and if it takes, for example, knight b1 wins the queen. So yeah, it's pretty horrific. Basically, it's a horrific position. But in the game, funny enough, in the game actually, Black played Queen D5, which also looks pretty devastating as well for C3 and Queen A2. Okay, I hope your docking computer for white is still turned on. So this is where another even if. We talked about these even ifs. Even if you're short of time in a 5-minute game, even if the opponent's like 1,000 rating points higher, even if you've been depressed the whole game, or you've been seemingly crushed the entire game, and even if you seem to have zero teamwork in your position, apart from maybe 2 pieces in theory, or 3 pieces, let's add some even ifs to this idea of the docking computer. The docking computer is without emotion. It's a concept without emotion, separate from strategic play. All of White's strategic play seems to have been backfired in this game through Black's energetic dynamism. The horrible, leaving of the knight on e4 was just cruelty for White. The use of a4 was just cruelty for White. Peeling open the a file, you'd expect the 2300, quick resign, end of story, learn to play bishop takes f6 the next game, end of story. But Queen d5, keep the docking computer on for White. 10 seconds here, what do you find? Or you may want to stop the video. Forget that 10 seconds, I'll give you 20 seconds. 20 seconds starting from now. What did White play here? Starting from now. Okay. Okay, shock, horror for the Canadian Open. The expected result was overturned by White's next move. Spectacular, knockout, blow. Be alert. Be aware of forcing moves, no matter how outrageous. What did White play? White played Queen H7 check, and Black had to resign. It's a completely forcing move, even though it's outrageous, because it emphasises actually White only needs 2 pieces in his team to make Black. Black is forced to play king takes, then we would have rook takes, the king would move back, and then we would have mate. What a shock horror. So Black had done all the legwork for the dynamism in this game, but he let his guard down for one moment, and that moment was resourcefully seized by Aman, who's an incredibly resourceful player in bullet as well. Even low on time, he's still finding very resourceful moves. So this was okay, a little bit of luck, but it shows alertness and it shows not giving up. So it's got a lot of I think things to it that we can remember. If we feel we've been totally outplayed, totally crushed, we haven't got much teamwork in the position, sometimes all you need is like 1 or 2 pieces to make the opponents. So keep the docking computer on, the concept. It was a shocking game. There's no doubt about it. Aman has said he was being crushed when we talked about the game briefly. And yes, but it's a brilliant final move though, a shocker. I hope you'll agree. So for Nimzo Indian fans, it shows actually the great dynamism in this Queen C2 line, which many consider a major line, main line, but it shows how violent Black can be, with this piece sack on e4. So that's something also to bear in mind. But yeah, one casual move, Queen d5, and end of game. Queen h7 check. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks so much.